Good afternoon, and welcome to our Coaching, Mentoring and Giving Impactful Feedback webinar. I'm Dr. Lian Kok Fei, Assistant Professor in FAM, and I will be your host for today. We know that coaching and mentoring can make people more successful in their lives and careers. So this session will most definitely be beneficial to you. Before I proceed further, let me introduce our speaker today. Ms. Chua Chai Ping was HR Director in Experian in their Global Development Center in KL in June 2017. In November that year, she was promoted to country site leader in the same company. Over a career spanning more than 20 years, she joined the Big Four fraternity in consulting before going into HR. Before joining Experian, Ms. Chua was HR Director at Mondelez and country HR leader of Malaysia and Vietnam for Accenture. She is one of Talent Corp's diversity advocates, member of the Malaysian Institute for Human Resource Management National Council, mentor for Lead Women in Leadership Program, mentor for APEC, Women in Transportation Mentoring Program, and industry adjunct faculty for INTI International Universities and Colleges. With such an impressive credentials, I am sure you will find this afternoon session rewarding and insightful. To all our participants, if you have any questions, please drop them in the Q&A tab, and we will try to pick up as many as we can. Without much further ado, let me pass the floor to Ms. Chua. Ms. Chua, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Can you all hear me loud and clear? Prof, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very loudly.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Yuta. Thank you, Prof. Thank you, Guan Yan and team for having me today. I think this is fairly long in the coming, and we were looking at some opportunities as well as some sessions, right, that hopefully will be meaningful. And given, as what we call now unprecedented times and the new normal, I thought perhaps, giving impactful feedback as well as mentoring and coaching may be relevant in today's context. A couple of caveats. I hope today's session, the next 50 minutes or so, will be an opportunity for me to share some general understanding of what giving impactful feedback is, as well as mentoring and coaching. And also, hopefully, it is a time where not only for me to share, but also for me to reinforce what you probably already know. And then on that note, a couple of disclaimers from me and caveats, right? What I'm sharing today really is, I guess, drawn from some of my personal experiences, as well as, what has it been, what mentoring and coaching meant to me, and what's in it for me, the deep gratification that I got from, doing some of the mentoring and coaching throughout my career. And importantly as well, at the same time, I guess mentoring for me on a personal front has been, also reverse mentoring. I have gained even more.
Miss Chua, sorry to interrupt. Miss Chua, can you hear me? Sorry to interrupt.
Maybe next slide, please, Karthik.
Miss Chua, sorry to interrupt, Miss Chua, but I think a bit too soft. I received feedback is a bit too soft. Can you speak a bit louder, please? Can you speak a bit louder, please?
So maybe I thought I'll just use this opportunity to center ourselves and maybe just check in, right, on how we're all feeling today. Okay. Sorry, I think, can you all hear me? Prof, can you hear me still?
Participants say a bit soft. Maybe you need to put the volume louder.
Can you hear me still?
I can hear you, but the participants are saying it's a bit soft. Very soft. Can you increase the volume, please? Very soft. Please speak near the mic. If you go nearer to your mic, then it'll be louder.
Is it still very soft?
Still very soft. Still very soft. Yes, yes. From many of the participants, they can't hear you. They can't hear.
Can you hear me?
Soft, still very soft. Yeah, still very soft. Still cannot hear.
Is this better?
Still not good enough. Still soft.
Is this better or still very soft?
Participants, I think you better turn your volume up. Your speaker volume. Please turn up your speaker volume. Those of you who cannot hear, please turn up your speaker volume. Many of them already on 100, they cannot hear. Miss Chua, they say they cannot hear.
Yeah, okay. Probably what I'll do is, yeah. Okay, maybe let me try to log in and log out again then. Yeah.
Okay, sure.
Is this better now?
Okay, can hear now. Okay, now it's okay. Now it's better.
Loud and clear. Okay.
Sorry for interrupting you.
Okay. No problems. Apologies again. Technology and unprecedented times, right? So maybe just on the next, I wanted to use this opportunity to maybe just center ourselves and just, in the group, in the chat, right? Just let me know how you're feeling. Karthik, next slide, please. Yeah. How you're feeling? Yeah. Grateful, sleepy, or happy, right? Yeah. Or anxious. Yeah. Sleepy, grateful. I see some grateful coming through. Still some grateful coming through. Thank you very much. Blessed, wonderful. Grateful. Yeah, a lot of grateful and blessed coming through. One or two sleepy. My apologies again. It's probably that time of the afternoon. I see some anxiety coming through as well. Thank you for being very honest. Yeah, thank you. Anxious because of the pandemic. I understand with the rising numbers. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very, very much for sharing. I wanted to make sure that we are a bit centered to what we're going to talk about today, and just bring the time for yourself, right? And use this next hour or so for ourselves as we recalibrate, right, for the future. So next slide, please. Okay, so the next slide really is about what we're going to talk about today. I wanted to introduce you to the concept of VUCA if you don't already know. And if you already know VUCA, great. If you have any thoughts to share about VUCA, wonderful, right? And then I wanted to talk a little bit about mentoring and coaching. So for today's purpose, mentoring and coaching will be used interchangeably because the two concepts are often very intertwined, right? And then I wanted to talk about the trust quotient, and I wanted to talk about giving feedback and the Hamburger Theory that I try to use, and then that I've been trying to use as well. Is that okay?
Please go ahead. That will be fine.
Okay. So, yeah. All right. So next slide. What you see is, I hope, a very common character. Anyone knows who this is? Yes. Thank you very much. This is Yoda. I wanted him to be as confronting as we possibly can. And some quotes from Yoga: difficult to see, always in motion is the future. Powerful you have become, the dark side I sense in you. To answer power with power, the Jedi way, this is not. I want you to start reflecting of some of these, to me, very powerful quotes. The first one being, difficult to see, the future is always in motion. I think just overnight, if we think about COVID and the pandemic, right? COVID came fast and furious, no notice given. If I look at powerful you have become, the dark side I sense in you, think about leadership, think about your own leadership style. As you become more powerful, have you been drawn to the dark side? And to answer power with power, is that the leadership way? that we are trying to promote. Yeah. So next slide. So with that in mind, let me introduce the concept of VUCA. Again, show of, well, I guess maybe just in the chat box again. Has any one of you?
Yes, no question. Yes, VUCA, no, not really, never heard. No, okay. Any yes in the room? No, never heard of VUCA. Okay.
Miss Chua, sorry to interrupt again. The volume cannot hear now. Volume, too low.
Can you hear?
Can't hear. Miss Chua, we can't hear you now.
Can't hear you. Can you hear? Okay.
Okay.
All right. I'll carry on until someone pings me. So apologies again. So I see many, maybe many of you have not heard of the term VUCA. Let me introduce it, in a moment, right? Now, the next couple of slides just show you slide 6, please, Karthik. So if I think about VUCA, if I think about disruption, in 1956, when IBM was going to ship a 5 MB hard drive, this required, the number of resources required was quite monumental compared to what 5 MB can do today. We talk about gigabytes today and much more, right? And in 1956, right, just over 50 years ago, to transport a hard drive of 5 MB was huge and required. Now, in the next slide, if I think about COVID today, right, it has already hit 35 million cases with more than 1 million deaths. Closer to home, again, very sadly, our numbers, have been very, very high. And our deaths is now at just slightly over 140 deaths in the country. Again, overnight, if you remember, cast your mind back to March 18. As I said earlier, COVID came fast and furious, no heads up, no warning, right? And thereafter, in succession, our economy and the global economy, jobs, in terms of GDP, in terms of just, mental issues, well-being issues, and social issues. A lot of things happened in just overnight in the last few months, right? So then what is VUCA, right? Let me introduce you now to the concept of VUCA. And I thought, it's a timely topic because given the pandemic, given COVID, now more than ever before, the concept of VUCA, let's try to embrace it a little bit and try to understand a little bit so that as leaders, that many of us are, we can start, hopefully charting the way forward, not only for ourselves, but for people around us, and importantly for the teams that work with us. So V stands for volatility, U for uncertainty, C for complexity, A for ambiguity. If we center around what's happening today with, VUCA, and I specifically, call out COVID again. Think about V, volatility. Changes due to COVID-19 are taking place every day, unpredictable and very dramatic and fast. U for uncertainty, no one can predict with confidence when the pandemic will end or when we will have a cure vaccination. I think there are now talks that vaccine will come by the end of the year. Some say in another year, some say 6 months, right? And think about the complexity of what COVID has caused us, right? The pandemic is affecting all aspects of our lives, including healthcare, business, the economy, and social life. Think about ambiguity. There is no best practice. I think today, no one and no country can claim any best practice or organization that we can follow. I think for many of us who run organizations, to the best of our ability, we follow SOPs. We do what is best to safeguard the interest and well-being and safety of our people, but we don't even know whether that's best practice, right? I think our DG talks about the 3 C's and the 3 W's, right? And following SOP, I think that's shown to flatten the curve, but is that still best practice? It is still anyone's guess. Now, with VUCA, the consolation is in that little orange box beneath VUCA, that is actually the antidote. Right? So now, again, more than ever before, the antidote of volatility for V is vision. Leaders today got to continue to make sure that we stick to our purpose and our values and be ambitious and be audacious, right, about what's happening. Because if we don't steady the ground, if we are not going to be the anchor in the storm for our people, it's going to be very hard to lead teams and keep them engaged and keep them productive, right? For uncertainty, what we can do today as leaders, the antidote to uncertainty that is all around us is actually to have understanding. And understanding comes with some empathy, right? Leaders today absolutely need to start being, to lead with empathy, to understand threats, to understand the impact on our people, especially if we talk about well-being today, and the impact on the economy. For complexity, the antidote for complexity is clarity, and clarity about actions and next steps. As I said earlier, we absolutely need to steady the ground and be that anchor in the storm. For ambiguity, we now more than ever before got to be adaptable, right? And if you think about manufacturing companies, right, they have adapted very, very quickly to make sure that they start manufacturing PPEs, right, for the frontliners, and they start innovating, because the traditional way of just doing manufacturing may not hold in this pandemic. So VUCA has its antidotes, and therefore hopefully it will be today, right, is a session for us to start reflecting, right, and start recalibrating as well as to whether, we as leaders to have that self-awareness with VUCA, with the pandemic, with a global recession looming, right? How do we then become better leaders so that we wrap our arms around our people? Okay, so far okay? Getting the set VUCA is? Yeah, maybe in the chat box. Thank you very much. Yes, wonderful, yeah. Okay. In the next slide, and I take a quote again. As you can see, my presentation is filled with some quotes, and there's a reason for it, because these are real people who have led through some stormy times, right? And John Quincy Adams is an American statesman, diplomat, lawyer, and a diarist who lived in the 1700s to the 1800s. And he says this: if your actions inspire others to dream more, to learn more, do more, and become more, you are already a leader. So I just want to take 5 seconds on this, right? If you think about this quote, right? Do you think that, in your day-to-day, right, have you already inspired others to dream more, learn more, do more, become more? So let me give you, a few seconds. And once you have thought about it, very quickly in the chat box again, just put in another yes/no question. Yeah, just think about it so that at least thank you, Sozon. Anyone else? Yeah, no? Don't be too modest, yeah? Please don't be too modest. Yeah. Thanks, Karina. Paige, thank you very much. Yeah, any other thoughts? Think about your own actions. Have you already inspired people to dream more, learn more, do more? Because if you have already become a leader. So well done, yeah, at times, even if it's sometimes, yeah. Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Yes, Jiasian, thank you very much. Yeah. So how do we lead in times like this? I mean, it's VUCA times. uncertain times, anxious times, right? Even as leaders, right? We have become more anxious than ever before, but we have to continue to steady the ground, right? And be the anchor in the storm. How then do we lead in times like that? So let me then talk a little bit about mentoring and coaching, right? Next slide, please. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, mentoring and coaching for today's purpose, right? I'm just going to use it very interchangeably because, you know, they are very intertwined and it really complements each other, right? So mentoring and coaching really, if I think about it, if you have already inspired someone, if you have got someone to dream more and do more, you're really unleashing one's potential. You are really, you know, also encouraging, you know, the growth mindset, right? And it's no longer just a fad. But, you know, I think for leadership and leaders today, you know, it should not be a fad. It must become a fundamental. It must become purpose-driven because only 10% of managers and or leaders today mentor or coach. A lot of times when we talk about development for people, people say, oh, send me for a course, a 3-day course, a half-day course, send me for external classroom training. But really the essence of it, I think some of the best outcomes I've seen is not attending a 2-day course or a session like mine today. It is really making sure that we become better coaches and mentors, and we ourselves get coach and mentors as well, right? For our own growth and development. And when you give time, right, to your teams or to people that report to you, you start building resilience for the future. And the term about trust and hyper collaboration, which I'll touch on a little bit later, will come into play because the only way to test trust is to give trust. Think about it, right? Again, the only way to test trust is to give trust, right? And therefore the mentoring and coaching concepts really heavily hinges on what trust is. And only with trust, and you give trust, then, you know, your mentors and your coachees will be able to trust you to take them to bigger and better places, right? So hyper collaboration, interdependence, right? Promoting a collaborative culture and being successful together, right? The win-win concept, for me, is a win-win-win concept, right? To make sure that we as leaders, coaches, and mentors, right, dismantles the roadblocks, the blind spots, and to make sure that we ourselves have self-awareness, right? Hyper collaboration, trust, and importantly, co-creation, right? Because together we will get better at what we do, right? So I think that's an important concept. The next slide is really about, I will tell you what mentoring and probably coaching is and what it is not, right? Because there are some misconceptions out there about what mentoring and coaching is. So mentoring is creating a structure of engagement, right? It's co-creation, hyper collaboration. Coaching is facilitating learning and is very task oriented. So if I really want to differentiate a little bit, mentoring is a much longer period where there is, you don't put in the SMART objectives. Coaching has SMART objectives, it's time bound as well, right? But those two today, for today's purpose, as I said, will be intertwined. Mentoring is not a passive endeavor. So mentoring, even coaching for that matter, it should be very much driven by your team members or your mentees or your coaches, right? It is a therapy session, and it is not a therapy session, and it's definitely not a one-way street, right? Similarly with coaching, it is not babysitting. Please don't think that by babysitting your people, you're doing them a service. You're not. It will not be advantageous. So don't babysit. Similarly to our children as well. And coaching, it is not focusing on inadequacies. So for me, I think from my experience, coaching and mentoring, right, when we focus on strengths, the outcome is almost always, right, much better than when we originally set out, right? So make sure that when we coach and mentor, don't focus on inadequacies or just areas of development, but maybe just play out to your coaches and to your coachees and mentees' strengths, okay? So a little bit more about mentoring and coaching on slide 13. Mentoring and coaching really, to me, is the yin and yang. And therefore, if you think about the Chinese philosophy, the yin and yang describes how seemingly opposite and contrary forces can come together and be complementary, interconnected, and interdependent. So mentoring is usually informal, open-minded, and intended to provide advice pertaining to a situation or organization. Coaching has clearly defined goals, as what I mentioned. So the SMART goals. I don't know whether you guys are familiar with the SMART goals, S-M-A-R-T, specific, measurable, actionable, time-bound, right, and situational. Okay, great. Thanks, Ozon. And coaching has that element of time-bound and very, thanks, Karina. So very focused, right, on the outcome and the task at hand and with a time limit, right? And helps you discover answers and solutions for yourself, right? So that's what mentoring and coaching, and I personally use it actually very interchangeably. A lot of my coachees are also my mentees and vice versa, yeah, because I found a lot of value just applying the yin and yang concept. Okay, I also then wanted to introduce you to the concept of trust. Has anyone been introduced to the trust quotient before? Has anyone seen trust quotient before? On the next slide. Yeah. Yeah, okay. No, okay. Just a quick show of hands, right? So that because if you have seen the trust quotient before, then I won't spend too much time and then we can go into the other topics as well. Yeah? No? Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Right. All right. All right. Thanks everyone for your sharing. The whole concept of trust quotient, as I mentioned earlier, for any relationship to happen, just if you think about a brother-sister relationship, friendship, husband and wife, boss and employee, you know, mother and child, you know, for any relationship to work, I think the bedrock, right, of a successful relationship is often called trust. And I wanted to introduce the concept of trust because I've used it quite a lot in my career, given that I think trust is something that you give, you know, almost non-judgmentally, right? And I do that. And again, once you give trust, often it's reciprocated, because if you're going to be always not trusting, and you, on the other hand, also not trustworthy, that is very hard for any relationship to work. So let's talk a little bit about the components of the trust quotient. The first one being credibility, right? Credibility is about expertise, skills, and mastery, right, of your core competencies, right? What are you good at? What are you strong at? If you're a science teacher, then obviously science, you know, it's going to be your strength, right? And that is mastery of your area of expertise, right? The next element is reliability, right? Reliability is really about consistency, predictability, right? And consistency is, if you say you're going to be there for an event or a meeting, you're going to show up, right? And people know that for sure, you know, you will always show up regardless, unless it is a really unforeseen circumstance, right? So that's reliability. And intimacy is really about your rapport with people, and also the relationship, right? What's our relationship? And this has some element of empathy as well, right? So how do you engage in a relationship, and what do you give out in a relationship? How do you build rapport, right? And at the bottom of it is self-orientation, which is really self-awareness, right? And self-awareness is, are you considerate? how do you show up, right? And what's the state that you carry when you show up, right? And the persona that you come, right, when you show up. Because a lot of leaders may be very good, so they are very credible in their area of expertise, but may not have the self-awareness because maybe they don't know. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know. Sometimes they are but maybe their ego, right, gets the better of them, and then they say, okay, I'm boss and therefore I can do whatever I want. So self-awareness is very, very important. Self-awareness is also used right now to assess your potential, because you can be, let's say you're financially very literate, you're very business savvy and all that, but if you don't have self-awareness, typically your potential to grow into the future is going to be reduced. So, for leaders like ourselves, I think let's watch, a little bit of the self-awareness. So these are the few components in the trust quotient, and it all adds up, right? To tell someone whether you are trustworthy or you're not trustworthy, right? And whether you can be trusted as a leader. So think about it. And again, use this opportunity to do a little bit of self-reflection and what you do, right, as a leader or manager, or if you are as a member of the academia, right, when you show up to your students, right, how do you show up? Do you embody all these elements so that your students trust you? And if they trust you, then, I think that the engagement level, it's going to be much higher than before. Right? So think about that, yeah? Okay, so the next slide, a little bit more about being a trustworthy leader, yeah? It's really about authenticity, self-compassion, and attention, right? Being a trustworthy leader is what you get by doing what's right and acting with integrity, because that improves your own well-being and you flourish as well as a leader. And today, well-being are broken down into many, many components, including physical, mental, spiritual, financial, emotional, social, psychological, occupational, environmental, as well as intellectual. So I think today, especially with the pandemic, right, all these aspects of well-being is now being researched by scientists and researchers, right? Because it has some long-lasting impact, right? The other thing about being a trustworthy leader is it strengthens your relationships and your leadership. So think about your own leadership style and what role model you want to show up as, right? And how you actually want to strengthen the relationships that you already have, right? And being a trustworthy leader really is about sharpening your own awareness and broadening your own mind, because let's not forget, while we encourage our mentees and coachees, right, to have a growth mindset, we ourselves got to have that growth mindset as well, right? And also keep your ego in check. So what then is authenticity? Authenticity is living in accordance with one's true self, being true to yourself. Some people will tell me things like, as long as my conscience is clear, I can sleep at night, I'm being true to myself. That is not untrue. So I think there is a lot of truth in it. Think about it. If you have done it, despite how difficult your day is, if you have done a good day's job, your conscience is clear. Often, we sleep very, very well, right? And that's authenticity, right? And that results in increased motivation and drive, right? The other one is I wanted to introduce the concept of self-compassion, because a lot of times people think that, I should only look after other people because I'm selfless, I'm very self-sacrificing and all that. But if you don't look after yourself, if you don't have self-compassion, if you're not going to be kind to yourself, and you yourself are not in a good state, you won't be able to look after others, okay? And attention, more likely to pay attention to changes in subordinates' performance, right? And give useful feedback on how to improve. Again,
that would be your empathy playing up, making sure that you understand your team members enough, or your students for that matter, enough to understand the little changes in their lives. And once you have built up that rapport with them, once you've built that trusted relationship with them, often it's actually quite easy to tell there's a change in someone's life and how you can play a part to help that person be resilient, to get up, not only get up, but to bounce back and move forward. That is resilience, because getting up is only one part of being resilient. The full thing about being resilient is you have to bounce back up and move forward, be able to move forward. So in slide 17, this is a photo of someone that I think we are pretty familiar with. Yes? Has anyone not seen this very familiar face over the last 5 or 6 months now? Anyone who doesn't know him, please say no in the chat box. Have you all seen him before? Yes? No? Okay. Lol, yes. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you. Thank you, Anli. Puyin, thank you very much. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Making. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm sure Hero, yeah, yes. So this is a very familiar face, and I thought it's appropriate to bring his picture and to tie it to COVID and tie it to leadership and what we are talking about today, right? So a quote from him: the first intention is to serve. If you think about selfless leadership, servant leadership, and leadership as a whole, the first intention is to serve. Serve the people, help the people. It's not about us, it's about how we serve. For the people, from the people, right? Powerful words, yeah? I think yesterday he tweeted as well to say that, right, this is not about, I think to his frontliners, this is not about you, it's about us, about the people, because the people need us and the country needs us. And he always says this, kita jaga kita, right? We look after ourselves, right? So very, very powerful words, right? So in the next slide, in slide 18, right? Think about how DG Hisham shows up, right? Pandemic for the last 6-7 months on a daily basis. You know, he shows up in front of the media, in front of all of Malaysia. How does he do it? Besides portraying a servant leadership, he remains consistent. Think about your trust quotient now. He remains consistent. Now think about VUCA as well. He remains clear and the authoritative figure during the pandemic. And the interesting thing is he is delivering for the most part, not so great news. So despite how difficult and despite, you know, the sudden spike in numbers over the last few days, right? He remains consistent and he delivers the bad news, right? And the number of active cases in Malaysia, the growing clusters, the number of deaths, and the number of those who recovered. So not great news, right? Leaders are tested not only during good times, but true leadership is tested, to me, during challenging times, right? Think about it. So think about VUCA, think about the trust quotient, and think about now DG Hisham, how he's bringing all this together. During VUCA, right, he gives you his vision. He talks about the 3 C's and 3 W's. He gives you the understanding, right, to give the antidote, right, to the very, very difficult climate that we are in. Last but not least, and somehow the way he does it and the level of empathy he shows make him seem like he's the right person at the right time. So I think, you know, at this point, he seems to be the anchor in the storm and to be the one steadying the ground, right? So, so I just wanted to bring, you know, the pandemic and leadership to life, right? Because, thank you, Mo. He is indeed a role model. I mean, he's not delivering. I think before COVID, no one knew who DG Hisham was, right? But during COVID, during very challenging times, he has stepped forward and be that anchor in the storm. Okay. So my last and by no means the least important, now message delivery, slide 19, message delivery and feedback. The last concept that I wanted to share with you as leaders, right? Delivering a message and difficult messages are again true tests of a leader, right? I mean, during good times, boom times, you know, economic upturn and all that, it's very easy, you know, to give messages. And how do you do it, right, during more challenging times? Okay, so I'll introduce you to the Hamburger Theory. The Hamburger Theory, yeah, so the technique that I've tried to use, right, even sometimes on my children is, you know, with the hamburger, to make the hamburger full and wholesome, you start with the bread on top, right, the bun on top. You start with the compliment, right? And then the chunky burger in the middle is where you're going to give constructive criticism, right? And then after that, you round it off again with another compliment, because then it's positive first. Positive first, because when you want someone to listen to you, you start with a positive, because once you start with a negative, if you think about it, people will feel cornered and their minds will shut down and their growth mindset will be switched off, right? And it becomes a closed mindset. So offer a compliment, you know, give a compliment, then give your chunky constructive criticism in the burger. And then after that, you finish off with another compliment, so that you make your hamburger as wholesome as possible. Yeah. When offering a critique, right, it's often a critique about the problem at hand rather than personally attacking the individual. You begin with constructive compliment on something the person has done well. And then after that, you finish off with a constructive as the burger, the hamburger in the middle, right? What they can do better. And then after that, you finish off with another fluffy bun at the bottom, right? So always focus on the positives, right? Try to bring out, right? Being a coach and a mentor and a leader is unleashing the potential of our people, right? So that they go the extra mile, right? And then you grow together, the hyper collaboration and the co-creation, right, will come into play, okay? And when you're giving feedback, take note, this is slide 21, take note, be a listener. Listen and not just hear. Listen the person out and listen to what they're really saying, not what you assume they will say, yeah? So listening is now a strong technique, right? That is very well researched. There's a whole body of research on listening. So please go do look it up, because I think sometimes you are poor listeners. We only hear without listening. And I mean active listening, okay? Empathy is another one. Empathy is sense other people's emotions, try to understand their perspective and take an active interest in their concerns. So empathy versus sympathy, not jumping into their problems, because if you're going to jump into their problems, just in an aeroplane, when we can fly again, when the oxygen mask comes down, drops, you help yourself first, because otherwise you can't help your child or people around you. So empathy is also about helping yourself first, and then only you can help others. Then you can become empathetic versus sympathetic. Once you are sympathetic, you jump into the hole with that person, you won't be able to pull yourself out. So take note of that. Your tone, have an appreciative tone, understand the concerns and state what you have observed. Paraphrasing, your tone of your voice, tone and silence, right? It's a strong technique, right? Tone and silence is a strong technique to show whether you're empathetic, whether you're listening or not, yeah? Last but not least, body language. Again, there's a whole host of literature research on body language, empathy, listening, and tone, making eye contact, you know, and how you lean forward, how you sit in your chair, how you twitch your eyebrow, all that, you know, is your body language, because all this as well adds up to the trust quotient. So think about it, okay? I will now move to slide 23, my last and final slide. Very importantly, take care of yourself first. Again, the analogy, and I think a lot of people use it now on the mask, right, in an aeroplane. If something were to happen, if you don't put the mask on first, you can't help your child, your loved ones, and the passengers around you. You can't pour from an empty cup, right? Remember that you can't pour from an empty cup. So take care of yourself first. Self-love, self-care, and self-compassion, okay? Self-love, very quickly, is the physical, mental, spiritual well-being through healthy eating, exercise, rest, fiscal responsibility, strong social network, and all the beautiful things you can do to take care of your sweet self. Self-care is measured by one's own feelings about your own happiness and well-being. Generally, self-love is akin to self-worth and how much we value ourselves. The understanding is that if we value ourselves enough, then we will engage in self-care. And self-compassion is engage with self-kindness, have empathy also for yourself, and accept your not so great behavior, right? And it's okay not to be okay, right? It is especially handy when you can't engage in self-care and aren't feeling self-love, okay? My last quote for the day is, there is a voice that doesn't use voice. Listen. I know you are tired, but come. This is the way. So I hope that, and this is by Rumi, Persian poet, Islamic scholar, and theologian who lived in the 1200s, and someone I try to refer to as much as I can to get some inspiration. So there you have it again. There is a voice that doesn't use voice. Listen. I know you're tired, but come, this is the way. If you think about our own teams and what we are going through today, and if you think about our coaches and mentees who are relying on us, right? I know they are tired, I know, and so are we. So it's okay not to be okay. Let's apply some self-love, self-care, self-compassion so that we can bring more people along with us on this journey, right? So with that, thank you very much. Prof, maybe over to you, and if there are any questions, the last 5, 10, maybe 15 minutes or so, happy to take those questions. Thank you once again. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Ms. Chua. That was a very informative and interesting presentation. I think among the things that we have learned today, VUCA, Hamburger Theory, relationships and differences between mentoring and coaching, and also very interesting quotations that were given by you. We have actually up to now received 2 questions that I will pose to you. So I will pose the question, one to you, and then let you answer, and then the second question. So the first question is as follows. How do we give feedback to improve someone without hurting or demotivating that person who requires the improvement?
Thank you, Prof. Okay, I think let's try to use Hamburger Theory. I'm sure that person would have done some wonderful things, right? So try to leverage, even if it's a small thing, right? Try to focus on that. So start with that. And then after that, you then give that constructive criticism or constructive feedback, and then finish off again to say, you know, you've done a wonderful job on the small tea party that you arrange or something like that. And remember, as leaders, we are not here to be popular. Yeah, that's what I tell myself all the time. We are here to do the right things, right? And to make sure that we have integrity, because sometimes, you know, the hard messages and the difficult messages need to be given. If you don't give those messages, we are not doing the person a favor. The person will not grow further. and we are only stagnating the individual. I know it's very hard sometimes, right, to give hard feedback to people, but let's try to use the Hamburger Theory. In my mind, for most part of it, I have used the Hamburger Theory actually pretty successfully, and I would urge you to try. Yeah, I would urge you to try.
Thank you. Thank you for a very informative answer. Let us look at the second question. The second question is, how do we encourage or help a person who always have a negative thinking?
How do we help a person who always have negative thinking?
Yes, this question came all the way from Kampa.
I see. Sure. Thank you from the question all the way from Kampa. Thank you very much for the question. I think day in, day out, right? We are challenged, right? We are challenged by people who will not take feedback, challenged by people who will tell you that they have all sorts of bad situations and all that. How then do we help them? And some people are just very, very defensive. Again, I would urge you and encourage you to try to use the Hamburger Theory. I have had, my fair share of very negative people in my team over the years, right? And how do we get them out of, that very silo mentality, right? Is to keep going at it, right? So we are also building credibility as a leader and using that trust quotient, consistently keep pulling that person out, right? And have heart-to-heart talk to tell the person, look, if you're going to be negative this way, it's not doing anyone any favor. And the worst thing is you are just going to victimize yourself, right? So a lot of patience, a lot of mentoring. Some mentees have been with me for many, many, many years. Some have been so negative to get to where they are today. It's been quite a milestone. So I will encourage you. It is not, nothing will happen overnight, I can assure you. So some takes years, because you must remember that a lot of them come with some baggage, right? Maybe their family environment, maybe their own psychological makeup, maybe their childhood, maybe their student days, they may have had some bad experiences. So I would encourage you to draw all that out and help them see, right? There is, there is a pot of gold, right, at the end of the rainbow, right? So I think we have to make sure that we continue to stay positive, right? It's tough. I mean, there are days, generally I'm a positive person, but there are days you're like, okay, there you go again, right? But it's okay. And we ourselves have to admit that it's okay not to be okay as well, yeah? I hope that answers your question.
I'm sure that the answer is very helpful to the person who requested. Now we have actually 3 more questions here.
Sure.
The first one, how to keep yourself motivated and not emotionally affected by the mentee that you are mentoring?
A lot of self-care, self-love, self-compassion. Some of my peers tell me they go running every morning. Some people say they do some mindfulness session. I myself do a little bit of stretching yoga kind of thing, a little bit. I try to do it on a daily basis. I try to go for some walks, because I need to de-stress as well. I need to unload the baggage as well of what I receive, so that I become a better person, a better mentor, a better leader. And one thing, right, if we can keep stock of a gratitude journal, right, whether it's a mental log of blessings that happen in your life, thankful that I can still breathe, thankful I can still walk, thankful I can still have this session, thankful I can still, my family is safe, right, thankful for the food on the table. If we can do that for ourselves, I think I believe we can show up to be better leaders. Then we can be better and stronger for the people who need us. Because remember, mentoring and coaching and leadership, right? It requires a lot of energy from us, right? But think about it. Over the years that I've done it, I have also experienced some deep gratification. A lot of people say, why should I waste time leading a team? Why should I waste time teaching someone? Why should I waste time coaching or mentoring? It's such a waste of my time. But you know, a lot of times when you do it, that deep gratification that you get from it, right? It's far, far more than what money can get you. Trust me on that. Trust me on that. Yeah. Yeah. So I would again urge you to please think about it. Yeah. So don't be dejected or don't be, I guess, demotivated, right? By some very negative people around us. Yeah. I hope that answers your question.
Ms. Chua, once again, that was a very positive answer, and I think we are all looking for positivity today. Now, due to time constraints, it's already 4:01. I will read you only 2 more questions only.
Yeah.
So
sure.
the second last question: what are the greatest challenges that face coaching, people who are engaged in coaching and mentoring? The greatest challenges facing the coaches and the mentors?
I think so far I must say my own personal experience has been very positive. But I think one of the biggest failures that I've seen, right, from some of the peers, you know, in the industry and all that would be, you know, there's no interest. You don't, as a mentor or coach, if you don't have the genuine interest to mentor or lead or coach, right, please then don't do it, because you are not doing yourself a favor and you are going to cause more damage, right, to the individual you are coaching and mentoring. Likewise, as a coachee or a mentee, if you want someone to help you, a coach or mentor to help you, or a leader to help you, please be very interested in it, because I know of leaders and coaches and mentors who genuinely do it for no money. Many people I know do it for no money. So I would encourage you, if you want someone to help you, be genuine. So I think that relationship has to work. The trust has to be there for it to work, because then you're co-creating together, right? As I mentioned, it is that hyper collaboration that will bring you on a journey that is not only beautiful, but to the outcomes. And when you look back, right, it's more beautiful to a destination that is more beautiful than when you first started out. So be genuine in the mentoring relationship, both ways. Yeah, both ways. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Chua. Another very encouraging answer. The final question is, what are the requirements to become successful coaches and also mentors?
I think for me, you know, I think what's important is stay enthusiastic, stay hopeful, stay positive, right? Because these are things that will help you get through. You know, I don't mind sharing with you. I mean, just 2 minutes before this session, technology wasn't working for me. I think Karthik, you know, our IT guru from Utah, and thank God I had my son at home, and you know, my IT was going to come in with support and all that. You know, it was honestly, I was thinking maybe we have to already cancel or postpone this session, right? But I told myself, let's remain positive, right? What's the worst thing that can happen? I probably just do a voice, because I know the decks are already, you know, with Guat Yen. But I just, you know, and remain positive, right? And the worst thing that can happen is we'll reschedule the session, although there are 200 or 300 participants, right? And so I think when everything else fails, right, I think positivity, being hopeful and being enthusiastic, right, it's going to take us a long way, right? Is this the best, you know, technology support that I have? I'm using, I don't know whether you can see me, to be honest. I think even if you see me, it's going to be probably just my nose or my cheek somewhere. And then I think for the first 5-10 minutes, you couldn't hear me. And I told myself, okay, never mind, let's soldier on. Let's try to make it work. Let's try to make it work. And I think now that we are at the end of the session, I think it's gone okay, right? So in any